Almost 3,000 alleged military coup supporters have been arrested, of course, after an attempt to overthrow President Erdogan's government failed this morning.
A number of you guys have asked for a video about the recent coup attempt in Turkey, and there is no doubt that this is an important thing to talk about. It matters because of what it will mean for Turkey's internal politics, and given that Turkey is a vital regional power, it matters for the entire Middle East. So in this video, I'll talk about what some of the likely consequences of the failed coup will be for the country, discuss the key players, and ask a question I believe to be essential to any robust discussion of Turkish politics. Where are the secularists? July 15th, 2016. An attempted coup d'etat is underway in Turkey. Over 300 people are killed and more than 2,100 are injured. While President Erdogan releases a FaceTime message urging his supporters into the streets in protest, an ironic move considering his previous reactions to protesters, those behind the coup attempt have their own message for the country. The Turkish armed forces have completely taken over the administration of the country to reinstate constitutional order, human rights, and freedom. And that message turned out to be wrong for several reasons. First, they clearly did not take over the entire administration, and the coup ultimately failed. Second, they did not really speak for the entire Turkish armed forces, as the military seemed split between pro- and anti-Erdogan forces. Third, whether or not the attempt really was to secure constitutional order, human rights, and freedom is actually questionable, but more on that later. First, let's talk about the people who sent out this message. They call themselves the Peace at Home Council, a clear reference to a quote by Kemal Ataturk, the founder of the Turkish state and pretty much the architect of secularism in the Muslim world. And that latter accomplishment is no small feat. When Ataturk established Turkey out of the ruins of the Ottoman Empire, the state he was replacing was the opposite of a secular government. It was, in point of fact, a theocracy. A secular government is, of course, one which is totally neutral to religion. One in which, to quote the American Constitution, there is no religious test for office, and in which, to quote Thomas Jefferson, there is a wall of separation between the government and religious institutions. A theocracy, on the other hand, is a government that is essentially tied to a religion. For example, ancient Egypt, in which the pharaohs were considered god kings, or even Great Britain under the rule of King George, a monarch who was also the head of the country's official religion. A more modern example would be North Korea, in which the authoritarian tyrant is locally considered to be something more than a mere human being. The Ottoman Empire was also a sort of theocracy. It was a caliphate, an empire ruled by a caliph, or heir to whom? The Prophet Muhammad himself, founder of both Islam and the First Islamic Empire. So secularism is a precious thing in Turkey, and from time to time the military has had to step in to reinvigorate Kemalism in the country. And certainly the military might have reasons to step in to remove Erdogan. Since 2003, he has largely controlled politics in Turkey, first as prime minister and now as president. He has been criticized for cracking down on protesters, silencing the press, and electoral fraud. He has also overseen a revival of Ottoman traditions and has embraced Islamist-rooted politics. In sum, he is no friend to secularists. In reaction to the coup, there were mass arrests, with at least 6,000 people detained, including 2,839 soldiers and 2,745 judges. Educators have also been attacked, with 21,000 teachers losing their licenses and 15,000 educators suspended. Erdogan seems to be tightening his already iron grip over Turkey, and relations with the US are worsening. Erdogan is suspicious of US involvement in the coup, despite the fact that Obama denies any involvement.
Any reports that we had any previous knowledge of a coup attempt, that there was any US involvement in it, that we were anything other than entirely supportive of Turkish democracy, are completely false.
But Erdogan's principal suspect in the coup is Fethullah Gulen, an exiled Turkish political figure and preacher who was once an Erdogan political ally. While Gulen denies any involvement in the coup, instead claiming it to be a false flag operation perpetrated by Erdogan himself, it is actually quite possible that Gulen's followers, known as Gulenists, are responsible. If that is the case, which again we don't know, then the Peace at Home Council's claims that the coup attempt was to reinstate constitutional order, human rights, and freedom would be quite difficult to believe. While Gulen has claimed that secularism allows for 95% of Islamic principles, he has also called secularism in Turkey a reductionist materialism. And even though he supports a tolerant Islam and interfaith dialogue in his preaching, the guy is still a religious figure and former imam. Had the coup succeeded, and had they put him in charge of the country, it's hard to see how a religious former Erdogan ally who's criticized secularism in the past would have been able to steer the country towards Kemalism and secular democracy. So with Erdogan presently flexing his growing authoritarianism, his primary scapegoat and/or rival a preacher himself, and the military weakened from a failed coup, it seems clear to me that what we are now seeing in Turkey is nothing short of the erosion of Ataturk's political legacy. And with Islamic secularism dying in its natural home, the rise and continued resilience of the ISIS Daeshbags, and religious authority remaining central to the politics of both Iran and Saudi Arabia, I find no answer when I glance at the Middle East and wonder,